What if your kindness is the very signal predators use to select you? What if the virtue you prize most is the costume that keeps you weak? If that sounds unfair, good. Power is never allocated by fairness. It is taken by those who understand the game. You have been told that positive thinking builds strength. It does not. It builds comfort, a soft gauze over a hard world. Real strength begins when you strip away anesthetics and examine human nature as it is not as you prefer it to be. This is the first law of a cunning mind, brutal clarity. When the evidence contradicts your hopes, you side with the evidence. When patterns of disrespect repeat, you name them precisely and you act without delay. Machiavelli understood this with clinical precision. People move for interest more than ideals, and the individual who denies this will be bent by those who do not. Consider work. If your contribution is invisible or endlessly accommodating, you cede leverage to colleagues who trade in scarcity and signal power. Through calm criteria and consistency, consider relationships. If your boundaries are porous, you invite exploitation and then mislabel it fate. Consider projects. If the data show decline and you cling to sunk costs, you volunteer for ruin. Brutal clarity hurts because it burns away illusions you find emotionally useful. Friendships turn out to be transactions. Romantic myths dissolve into mutual utility. Some ambitions reveal themselves as borrowed dreams installed by culture to keep you compliant. The pain is not proof that clarity is wrong, it is proof that anesthetic wore off. The mind that tolerates such pain grows disciplined, cold in the right way, and capable of precise decisions. Yet clarity alone is not enough. A torch in a powder room illuminates and destroys. The second law is strategic emotional control. Anger becomes calculation, fear becomes radar. Sadness becomes reflective analysis. Joy becomes a timed tool of persuasion. This is not repression, it is governance. You choose when to reveal and when to conceal. You refuse to be a predictable instrument that anyone can play with praise or provocation. The calm voice and the steady eyes are not theater. They are signals that your interior is ordered. With interior order established, you design exterior signals. Perception rules modern life because decisions are made under uncertainty. Everyone sees what you appear to be, few access what you are. Therefore, you choreograph cues, speak with measured pace, ask precise questions, eliminate leakage, the nervous laugh, the defensive monologue, the apology that begs for approval. Maintain tactical silence so others reveal themselves. Reputation, like compound interest, accrues from consistency, not from brief intensity. These three moves form a spine. See clearly, govern feelings, engineer perception. Next comes execution, the discipline that turns cognition into reality. But first, a ritual. Write this sentence, I am my fortitude, not for spectacle, but to mark a shift. Tonight begin the conversion from passive hope to strategic agency. Clarity without discipline collapses under the weight of emotion. Strategic control without execution becomes a sterile philosophy. To integrate these principles, you must confront the second battlefield, the arena of emotions themselves. Every betrayal awakens anger. Every injustice awakens fear. Every abandonment awakens sadness. If these are left untamed, the very clarity that freed you will be weaponized against you. Your adversaries do not need to invent traps. They simply exploit your reactions. A sharp word triggers your rage, a calculated compliment lowers your guard, a hint of guilt chains you to their agenda. Machiavelli warned that a prince who cannot master his passions destroys his own dominion. In practical terms, a leader consumed by anger alienates allies. A professional paralyzed by fear sells influence cheaply. A partner who signals neediness becomes dependent prey. Emotional governance is not erasure, but conversion. Anger becomes energy, fear becomes vigilance. Sadness becomes insight, and even joy becomes a calibrated display that persuades when others are unguarded. The distinction between victim and strategist is not in what they feel, but in how they wield what they feel. Imagine negotiation. The impulsive counterpart telegraphs desperation, eager to close the deal at any cost. The strategist conceals urgency, projects calm, and secures terms favorable beyond expectation. Imagine conflict. The reactive individual escalates, loses control, and is marked as unstable. The strategist absorbs provocation, observes patterns, and strikes only when timing promises maximum effect. Emotional sovereignty is the difference between being predictable and being formidable. Now extend this sovereignty into the public domain. The third battlefield is appearance. Human beings are cognitive misers. They judge on signals, not substance. Perception outweighs reality in daily interactions, in institutions, in politics, and in commerce. Therefore, the question is not whether you should manage appearances, but how deliberately you choose to do so. Your demeanor is either armor or exposure. Your consistency is either authority or liability. Strategic appearance is not deceit, it is governance of narrative. Define the three attributes that encapsulate your essence. For instance, calm, precision, decisiveness. Align posture, rhythm of voice, pace of response attire, and digital presence with those words. Remove leakage, the nervous chuckle, the endless justification, the frantic oversharing. Employ tactical silence to create space where others disclose more than they intend. Authority is not declared. It is inferred by those who witness coherence. To live without managing appearances is to surrender your story to others. They will define you by your hesitations, by your excesses, by your inconsistencies. To live with deliberate signals is to carry a shield and a sword in plain sight. The mask is not hypocrisy, it is strategy. When the inside is ordered and the outside is consistent, abuse becomes costly and opportunity becomes attracted. But none of this matters without the fourth battlefield: execution. Too many admire their clarity, discipline their emotions, and polish their image, yet fail to act when the decisive moment arrives. Here lies the common graveyard of potential. They think they plan, they even appear strong, but they do not move. A strategist without execution is a ghost, impressive in theory, irrelevant in history. Execution is where the mythology of strategy either becomes reality or dissolves into fantasy. In every era, those who hesitated were consumed, while those who acted decisively, even with incomplete information, reshaped the field. Action without thought is recklessness, but thought without action is paralysis. The discipline of execution requires both calculation and cold commitment. When the decision point arrives, the strategist does not seek consensus or perfect conditions. He moves. Consider the entrepreneur who waits for flawless timing. Markets shift, competitors surge, opportunities vanish, and the dream withers untested. Contrast this with the one who launches early, stumbles, recalibrates, and ultimately dominates. Consider the individual in a corrosive relationship. Endless reflection offers clarity, but clarity without action chains them in place. The strategist confronts, cuts ties, and recovers sovereignty. Consider the professional trapped in endless preparation. Each excuse postpones the leap, and time erodes potential. The strategist acts, and the very act dissolves fear. Machiavelli observed that princes who doubted too long lost power, not because of enemies, but because of inertia. In modern terms, power gravitates toward the executor, not the dreamer. Action creates gravity. It draws resources, allies, and attention, while hesitation signals weakness and invites predation. The individual who consistently executes becomes difficult to ignore even if their first steps are imperfect. The act of moving forward is itself a declaration of power. This is why execution must be implacable. Once initiated, you burn the bridges behind you, eliminating retreat. The world reads hesitation like a predator, senses weakness. Implacable execution radiates finality. It communicates that the decision is made and others must now adapt to it. That is why decisive actors intimidate. Their certainty destabilizes opponents and galvanizes supporters. But execution is not the end of the journey. When clarity, emotional sovereignty, strategic appearance, and implacable action integrate something new, emerges a state of mind resistant to manipulation. You no longer move as a puppet jerked by emotion or illusion. You no longer appear as a hollow figure dependent on external approval. You become a presence that is difficult to ignore, both feared and respected, because you reveal a rare combination: lucidity, restraint, poise, and force. This integrated mindset is not comfortable. It strips innocence, it requires discipline, and it accepts solitude as the price of sovereignty. But it is precisely this harshness that builds resilience. Think of individuals who faced ruin and yet returned stronger, colder, sharper. They are not admired because they never fell. They are formidable because they rose transformed. The strategist views every fall as data, every betrayal as instruction, every defeat as rehearsal. Adversity is not punishment. It is an uncompromising training ground. When ordinary people collapse under chaos, the strategist sits calmly in its center, analyzing patterns, mapping responses, and preparing the return. That composure unsettles enemies and steadies allies. The capacity to stand unbowed when everything collapses is not theatrics. It is cultivated habit. It is the mark of someone who has metabolized pain into structure. Adversity is the crucible where strategy is tested and character is forged. Everyone can speak of strength when life is smooth, but true fortitude is measured when the ground breaks beneath you. Betrayal, failure, and isolation are not exceptions. They are inevitabilities. The question is not whether you will face them, but what structure of mind you bring into the collision. The ordinary response is panic, retreat, or resignation. The strategic response is analysis, recalibration, and renewal. Think of the distinction this way: the fragile mind asks, "Why me?" The disciplined mind asks, "How do I use this?" The first sinks deeper into helplessness. The second extracts value even from collapse. This shift does not happen by accident. It is cultivated through deliberate practice of brutal clarity, emotional governance, calibrated appearance, and implacable execution. Each setback becomes data. Each scar becomes instruction, and each loss becomes a filter that removes what is inessential. What emerges is not the same person who fell, but a sharper, colder, more lucid version. This is why the strategist acquires what can only be described as silent power. It is not loud, it does not beg for validation, and it does not require constant display. It radiates from presence. Those who have seen the edge and endured carry a calmness that unsettles others. They do not overreact, they do not overshare, and they do not seek approval. They observe more than they speak, and when they finally act, their decisions cut like steel. Silent power is magnetic. Some admire it quietly, some resent it, some fear it, but few ignore it. It alters dynamics in every room, every negotiation, every conflict. Where others vibrate with insecurity, the strategist radiates control. Where others oversell, the strategist lets silence and consistency build authority. Where others chase approval, the strategist projects independence, and it is precisely that independence that draws both respect and suspicion. This form of authority is what Machiavelli recognized centuries ago. Leadership is rarely about titles or official positions. It is about influence, and influence often belongs not to the visible throne, but to the hidden strategist who shapes the currents that move the throne. In modern life, this battlefield is no longer confined to palaces or courts. It exists in boardrooms, relationships, media, and digital spaces. The same principles apply. The naive employee who believes loyalty alone secures reward becomes expendable. The naive partner who confuses need with love becomes trapped. The naive citizen who consumes appearances without scrutiny becomes manipulated. The strategist applies the pillars ruthlessly in these contexts. At work, they read interests, clearly avoid emotional traps, and project competence with measured consistency. In relationships, they understand that respect is more valuable than sentimentality, and they act decisively when patterns reveal exploitation. In society, they recognize that narratives or theater appearances are engineered, and emotional appeals are tools. They neither surrender to these illusions nor pretend they do not exist. Instead, they exploit the structures others overlook. At this stage, the strategist no longer thinks in terms of self-protection alone. They begin to shape environments. Presence itself becomes disruptive to illusions, composure itself becomes an assertion of dominance, and consistency itself becomes a tool of influence. What began as a defense against manipulation transforms into a capacity to alter the field around them. This is how strategy becomes legacy. Legacy is not an accident. It is the cumulative effect of clarity, governance, perception, and execution applied consistently over time. Most individuals leave faint traces because their lives are directed by illusions and reactions. The strategist leaves marks because every decision is intentional, every signal is measured, and every action builds upon the last. In a noisy world, the steady voice becomes reference, the calm presence becomes anchor, and the decisive act becomes precedent. This is why the strategist does not need to announce power. Power is evident in the way others adjust themselves in their presence, in the way opportunities align with their direction, in the way adversaries hesitate before testing boundaries. The naive seek to be loved, the strategist cultivates respect. The naive chase comfort, the strategist cultivates resilience. The naive hope for fairness, the strategist cultivates leverage. Your choice is stark. Continue to live inside illusions, handing over your agency to those who manipulate appearances and emotions, or step into the discipline that few dare to embrace. Brutal clarity will cost you innocence, but it will give you vision. Emotional governance will cost you spontaneous indulgence, but it will give you sovereignty. Strategic appearance will cost you transparency, but it will give you control. Implacable execution will cost you excuses, but it will give you power. The transformation is not about cruelty or coldness for their own sake. It is about lucidity in a world designed to test you, strategy in a world eager to exploit you, and presence in a world addicted to noise. The final question is not whether you understand these principles, but whether you will embody them. Power does not arrive by chance. It is claimed by those willing to act. So decide. Will you remain a spectator of your own life, or will you claim the strategist's path? The path of the indestructible mind. The choice, as always, is yours.